Hello, Dandelions. Welcome, everyone. This is the Dandelion Reflections Podcast. My name is Caroline, and I'm with Chris, my co host. Very happy to welcome a special guest today,
Oh yeah,
another Chris,
another
Niebauer.
Chris.
And welcome. We're really glad to have you. We have good stuff to talk about. And Christopher, would you mind introducing the other Chris, please?
Yeah, well, I'm so excited and I'm so grateful for Dr. Chris Niebauer to be a part of our small, tiny podcast today, and we're very honored. And well, I have a certain opinion of you, of course, that is made up by my left brain. Hint, hint, I guess. But why don't you tell us what your Chris's idea of his I is?
Yeah, thanks. It's super cool to be here. I appreciate it. And I mean, what is the character Chris about? And I had a little bit of fun. So I have a book coming out. I say the character Chris takes all the credit, of course, but we know that's not true. You character Chris steps aside, and then you let this kind of interesting wisdom kind of pass through you onto the book, and that's the process. But of course the character Chris steps in and takes credit like I came up with anything. It's my name quote on the cover, and that makes it seem legit. But I think we all kind of know, the character Chris is limited. It's a collection of thoughts generated by the left brain. And I always thought that would be really a fun way to introduce, because we have this ritual of introducing ourselves, and what do you do? We start off with jobs, and we start off with careers and identities. And one of my fun ways to do it is to just, I'm a story created by the left brain, and that kind of stops people for a little bit. Yeah, but it usually gets an interesting conversation going. And so, that's what get the character Chris is a story created by the left brain, and that's okay. you know, you could see how things evolve. Sometimes they see the story as an enemy, something that needs to be dissolved. And then you realize, well, the story is just, you know, there's really nothing wrong with it. It's the attitude towards the story. If it's playful, then, so much work on identities. And, if they're taken seriously, they can cause a lot of trouble. But if there's a playfulness to them, uh, they could be quite fun. And so that's the attitude towards the story of Chris, and it's just a story, and there's no need to eliminate it or. In fact, it wouldn't be a very good title. No self, no problem was a nice, simple title. But if I were to retitle it, it would be No Serious Self, No Serious Problems.
Right. And we just you this is one of the books that you wrote. So no self, no problem, and that was that you were referring to. And I learned that there's a one upcoming.
So the abstract mind, at least to be out here in the U.S. in August, August 18th, I think, is the release date. But it's making its way. The rest of the world was kind of interested, so it's making its way. I'm not sure when it'll be available globally. But the premise is that the self is but one abstraction, a collection of thoughts. But modern culture has found itself deep into lots of abstraction. So we've got the self, and that's just one. But we've got all, our whole lives are these. For modern humans, we live in a collection of abstraction, and so that's what the book goes through. Things like ownership. Ownership has a huge effect on our lives, and we buy into it. And it's nothing more than a collective illusion. People say, well, this or that billionaire. It's like, if I were a billionaire, the only thing that would keep me up at night is the thought that people are going to discover that none of it's real.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Mhm. Thank you for saying that. I think you're right. This is the creation of our tangible world, just like the self, because I would say identities are helpful to help us navigate the tangible world where there are these concepts such as ownership, right? So, but we just need to know that it's kind of a game or a role, or it's not the real thing. It's not what's really real.
And that's it, perfectly put. That's the way that you just summarized the whole book. And whether it's ownership, government, or identifying with our physical body or our jobs. Jobs are a strange thing. You go into a building and everyone takes it so seriously, and you're like, oh, I'm a lawyer or I'm an accountant. It's just something you do for a little bit. But that's not the way we deal with it. We incorporate it into who I am. And we take it really seriously. So if someone loses their career, they suffer because they've lost an identity. And that's where identities cost us. That's how identities cause us suffering. Like the way you put it, like it's just a game. I'm not really an accountant. I'm not really this. I'm not really that. But if you play at it, there's no, and then if you find yourself jobless, and something else will come along. The universe has a strange way of responding to your own responses. And so if you just look at it as suffering and you just tell people your victim story, the universe has a way of perpetuating that. But if it's playful and you're like, oh, what's the universe got waiting for me? It's going to be interesting, and it's going to be an adventure. Then, strangely enough, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, that's true. So the idea that suddenly we dissolve the idea of I, that we are nothing but our own thoughts and ideas and things that is put up by our brain. Well, this seems like a revolutionary thought, but it is not so revolutionary. I have learned from your book. But before you go into that, how come that you started this path? What was the very moment that made the click for you personally?
Yeah, I'm not sure there was ever a click. I mean, there was a bunch of soft, like, kind of knocks at the door. And, I played guitar when I was young, and I really identified very strongly with that. It was a strong identification. I thought, I've got to do this for a living. I loved doing everything about it. It was just so much fun. And I wasn't very good. Well, the left brain is our worst critic. And so the left brain came along and was like, you're not very talented. You're probably not going to succeed. Now, a long time ago, I took that seriously. And so I thought, well, what else am I going to do? I thought, well, I better go to college. I mean, and it was right around that time my father had died, and, got thrown into this neurotic mess. And I just kept thinking, psychology's got to have some way out of this. I mean, psychology is the whole field of how the mind works. And if I got into this mess, they've got to have some suggestions on how to get out, and particularly neuroscience. This was back in the 80s and 90s. And at least here in the US, like the 90s were the decade of the brain. They made this very official, like Congress declared it, which I don't know what that means, but it seems like it must have been kind of important. And, we were kind of figuring out how important, the brain is still one of the greatest mysteries. And we've maybe discovered a fraction, maybe 1%, right? But it just seemed like it offered some solutions to what's going on. And so I thought, well, I'll get a degree in psychology. And that was working. There were some really wonderful things, insights psychology gave, but it wasn't the whole picture. And that set me on another path. And I just discovered Alan Watts kind of by accident. And he pulled me in deep into Eastern philosophies. And his ability to explain it to someone who grew up in the West, I found it to be, I couldn't get enough of it. So I just would listen to his lectures over, Mind Over Mind was one of my, I probably listened to that lecture hundreds of times. And his books, I was one of these neurotic messes carrying around This Is It by Alan Watts, everywhere I went, thinking like, there's got to be something really, because he seems so close to figuring it out. And And then, I did go to school. I went to grad school and a place that studied left-right brain differences, and that all sort of clicked. It just made, everything that, we're talking about Western thought and Eastern. It just made sense that the left seemed to represent Western pursuits, and the right brain seemed to represent Eastern philosophies. And I wasn't the first to notice this. There's several other authors who went into this, but that really seemed to, like, this is it. I'm on a good path, and so I kept pursuing it, and found myself as a professor, and came down with this rare illness. It's called epiglottitis, where your epiglottis, it's very life-threatening. Like a good percentage of people die from it. I almost did, but I couldn't sleep. And so I just was up all night, and then I started writing. And I discovered, like, if I get out of the way, the ego, the character Chris, if he just steps aside a little bit, all this cool stuff seemed to come out. And it wasn't me. It wasn't, but it seemed like I was channeling this. And it all I wrote it all down. And it was like this book came out in a week. It was this, and it was my first. It was before No Self, No Problem. It was called The Neurotic's Guide to Avoiding Enlightenment. And it was self-published, and didn't do, self-publishing, totally unknown author, and it had so many mistakes. I was so whimsical with grammar. Grammar is a function of the left brain. So when you start exploring beyond the left brain, it doesn't care about grammar anymore. It doesn't care about spelling. So I was making up my own ways, and the audience didn't appreciate this. And so if you look, reviews of it were like, oh my goodness, his take on grammar is, I don't know if it's inventive or he doesn't know how to spell. And it's probably a little bit of both. And then my now publisher picked it up, and it was funny because he teaches a class on writing. And his assignment to his students was, find me a book that's out there that made every mistake I talked about in class. And one of his students found my book. And then he was reading it, though, and he thought, oh, this is kind of got some good stuff. So he talked to me, and we were like, let's redo it. We'll redo it without the mistakes. And that's what became No Self, No Problem. Then we did the workbook and made it very practical, because you can, what I do, is it philosophy or is it practical? I like to lean towards the practical. What can someone take home? How do you apply this to everyday life, where you can go from the neurotic to a little bit more comfortable existence? And then we worked on this abstract mind that's coming out in August. And so it's been a very, and I left academia about 3 or 4 years ago. Academia was getting very strange. It was very left brain dominated. Yes. And if you're right brain, if you let the right brain guide your existence in this reality, academia is a very strange place. And so it just wasn't vibing for me anymore. It was like the universe was saying, you got something else I've got planned for you. So let's kind of move on. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm just writing books and enjoying everyday experiences.
Thank you so much for sharing this. This is so inspiring, Chris. And I would like to ask a question about death, because this is something we talked about just right before, as we introduced ourselves to one another. So what is your idea about our attitude towards death? What do you think?
So when we look at the left and right brain, one of the typical questions I get all the time, can you summarize it? What's the short version? What's like the TikTok version, or like a one sentence? Okay. Now, there's so many different answers I've given to this because it depends on the context. One way the left and the right sides of the brain differ is the left brain necessitates certainty. It just wants an answer. The right brain not only tolerates a mystery, but it enjoys a mystery. So we've got two competing, and we use this language all the time. We're like, part of me wants this, but part of me wants this. Part of me wants safety, but part of me wants the adventure. And when we describe that, we're just describing the workings of the two sides of the brain. But many modern cultures are over-identified with the left brain. So the left brain wants certitude about death, and we just don't have it. And so the left brain conjures up two different versions. The left brain may conjure up some kind of afterlife, but then it also conjures up this kind of emptiness, like it's all over. And, kind of the Richard Dawkins version, like, you're just nothingness again. And that's a very terrifying thought, particularly to the ego, but it's a terrifying thought to people. And so, but the right brain, and again, how do you shift from left brain dominance to right brain awareness? And there's no easy answer. It's a slow process. You work at it a little bit every day. But when the right brain gets going, you enjoy a mystery. You're like, okay, we don't know what happens. And that's the same I don't know that happens every day to you. I don't really know what's going to happen today. I don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. And life teaches or tries to teach us that all the time. But, we have these calendars and we're like, no, Monday, here's what's happening. And so, I always say the left brain plans and the right brain laughs. So, and then we can apply that to death, and it's a great mystery. We don't know, but the more you explore right brain awareness, there is a sense of it's going to be okay. And so whatever awaits, there's a very strong sense that the universe is a friendly place, and that extends not just to this life, but whatever lies beyond it.
I had an example that came to mind, Chris, as you were talking, that somehow it's going to work out. I had an experience recently. I dropped off my foreign exchange student to the airport early this week at an early hour. And there was something wrong with the luggage I gave her, so she could pack a lot of stuff. The worst could happen, and the retractable handle that you have to push back to check it in didn't go back because there was a metallic piece. It was, anyway, blocking it. And my former self would have panicked. I would have been drenched in sweat. Oh no, there's no place to buy because you're in an airport and somehow you can't buy a suitcase. It's at the terminal. This is so weird, right? And I was like, I felt so calm. Even though my mind was going many miles an hour, I texted someone who lived nearby, do you happen to have an extra suitcase? And then my boyfriend was there, just shoved it back in. And I can't put it into words, but I knew somehow, I didn't know how, but I knew that it would all be okay. And this was a great example. And I don't know if it's practice of, many years of meditation, behind my meditation mileage that has helped. But what are your thoughts about that? How do we get to that space? Because I thought this is the worst case scenario. We need to transfer stuff in the suitcase. We don't have time. I could have gone through the worst case scenario route, but I just had this calm in me. That's what I want to say. So what are your thoughts?
I really enjoy the way you put that kind of meditation mileage. And a lot of us want to get around that. We want some way where we can just, and I think this was back when the Dalai Lama was meeting with a bunch of neuroscientists. They had asked him, if you could just take a pill and avoid all the meditation, would you do it? And to their surprise, he was like, yeah, I would take it. Meditation is hard work. And of course they don't, you could debate a little bit whether that pill exists, but I think most of us are in that place where we got to put the mileage on. Mm-hmm. And every time you're doing that, you're turning the left brain down a little bit. But for me and many people, it never goes away. And your description is so perfect with this. It's still there. It still spins the worst case scenarios, but it's no longer taken seriously anymore. And I think a huge part of that is that voice in the head that's so connected with the mind. And we take that voice, one, it's an identification problem. We think we're the voice in the head. So when you start meditating, you're like, and sometimes teachers will do this. They'll say, when you meditate, turn the voice off. And so you spend a year meditating. You're like, I can't do it. And they're like, I know you couldn't do it. I just told you that. I just told you that. So you figure it out on your own that you can't turn it off. And some people it does turn off, but for a lot of us, it doesn't. But what we learn is, well, if I can't turn it off, it must not be me. And so, my work, I talk about the left brain, and that's language based, and how it's that left brain. When they do brain scans, the Broca's area, which is allowing me to talk right now, it's also active with the voice in the head. So you can be totally silent, but the inner voice is going. It's the same mechanism, and it's, you can't turn that off. And in fact, there's an irony that the more you try, and this is what people discover when they're adding up their mileage of meditation, they discover that the more I try to turn it off, the worse it gets. And so, there's that wonderful, beautiful moment of surrender that happens, and that's what happened to me too. And I had no idea. No one had talked to me about surrender. I just experienced, I was trying so hard to deal with my neurosis, and the harder I tried to deal with it, the worse it got. And I just said, I give up. I'm not doing it anymore. And that was the moment. It's like everything stopped for a little bit. And I thought, wow, this is really weird. I didn't read about this in any of the psych books. No one, but of course, Eastern philosophy talked about it quite a bit. And so, yeah, the voice in the head is such a strange thing, but you realize it's not you. That's an important insight. But then you also realize that you're going to move along in this existence, and it's going to be there. So that you end up having a relationship with it, and the relationship becomes more playful, and you don't take things too seriously. I always tell this story where, back when I was 50, here that this stuff guidelines, you need to get a colonoscopy and stuff when you're 50. So I went in and had the procedure and stuff, and the doctor came in, and she had her notepad and stuff, and she goes, your colon is unremarkable. And then I heard the voice in my head go, like it was offended. Like it was like, what do you mean? And I started laughing hysterically. I'm like, this is so, and she's like, looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, why are you laughing? You can't, like, what's going on? Why are you just laughing? I'm like, I wanted to tell her, like, look, my voice in the head said something that was hysterical. Like, but the interesting insight I had is like, after all this work, what I realized, I don't take the voice in the head very seriously anymore. And, it was offended, not me.
Right.
So the voice in the head is going, oh, this package is, we're in a big bunch of trouble right now because this isn't going to go in there. It's all not work. So it's going off, but all the time the real you is calm and knows it's all going to work out. And that's the experience I think people have after a while. They realize maybe there's nothing I can do about the voice in the head. It's this built-in survival mechanism. It's always going to tell this terrible worst-case scenario. It's never, ever going to work. This isn't going to work out. That isn't. I'm not going to have enough money. It's been these stories, but the real you, that's the observer behind the voice, it's like, it's going to be okay. It's always okay. I used to tell my students for years, there's never been a time when it wasn't okay.
Right. You're just making it up.
Yeah.
Okay. The story that you just told us, that was actually interesting, and it reminded me on a discussion I had with a good friend. He argued that okay, if someone says something, a bad word to you, or condescending, then you feel offended. But when I say you feel offended, then the moment I say it, I already realize, what is the you? What is I? Who is it that feels offended? Is it so when you get to this idea, when you get comfortable with the idea that it's just words and you interpret it from your past experiences and from your life and your culture, and then suddenly the alarm lights go on in your brain and say, oh, this is offensive. But is it? Is it really? Or is it just another story that we're making up, that we have been told, that we have been taught? And so suddenly, when we realize this, all these words just go by you like a cloud, and you you can try to catch it and take it seriously and try to grab it, and or just let it go and continue to fly past you. And there's a big freedom in there, right?
So I didn't know we had this. I thought it was a great idea. So when in the abstract mind, it comes with this kind of free, I don't know if it's a bookmark or it's this kind of like PDF that you can take around with you. And it's one of the basis of the books concerning language, the book when it talks about language, and it's called the abstraction ladder. So when we look at language, at the very bottom of the abstraction ladder are words that point directly to experience. You know, I can point to water, I can point to a mountain, and Zen knew all about this. You know, there's nothing wrong with these words. But then we started climbing up this abstraction ladder, and then we dealt with what we might call metaphors, where if I say, you know, my wife's an open book, people kind of get it because, you know, an open book is just exposed for everyone, and they get that I'm describing something about her personality, but which is pretty abstract too, but it's grounded in experience because you can open up a book, you know what I'm talking about. But the abstraction ladder, if we go up one more level, we start dealing with words that no longer point to anything. You know, ownership is a word that does not point to anything in our experience. I can show you paperwork, but that's just paperwork with scribbles on it. There's nothing that, you know, you could take any billionaire. There's nothing in the world of experience that proves that they in some way own the stuff that they're talking about. And so, you know, but the depth, so this is one of the main problems of modern culture. We're so high up, and you put it so well, Chris, like we're so high up, these words, they don't mean anything anymore. And so there was an experience I had back when I was faculty, and so we 450 faculty, we're all at this huge meeting, and the top, like the big three people introduced themselves, and I just so happened to grab a chair right next to them. Now, I was mind wandering, and I was on my phone. I don't really care for meetings. I have to admit, I was not present at all at this meeting. And so they introduced themselves, and they sit down, and I just mindlessly, I stood up and introduced myself. And all of a sudden, my mind was like, oh no, this is terrible. This is like, you're making a huge fool of yourself. This is so embarrassing. But at the same time, I started going, what is embarrassment? Is it anything? Like, so here I'm standing up, and I like started to introduce myself, and then I just kind of like stared out and like, because I'm pondering, like, what is embarrassment? Is it real? Like, they must have thought I totally lost it. And so I just sat back down, but it was a really interesting experience because what I discovered is like it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Like we think, like the left brain thinks it means something, and it tries to describe what it means. It's like, oh, my heart's racing. Well, maybe I'm happy. Maybe I'm just really excited. Like, and so the left brain, it so craves certitude that it does this with language. It pretends we know what words mean when we don't.
Yeah.
There are so many I call this made up words. You know, we just make up words all the time. And we say, I'm your manager. You know, well, what does that mean? Like, you're going to manage? Like, no, you know, the truth is you're just two humans in a building. One person wears a manager hat or a suit. And, you know, suits are these funny things that somehow give power to people. But the truth is you're just human beings. And if one person tries to take social power over you, it's an illusion. And they're hoping that illusion sticks. They're like, no, I'm the manager. Like, that's a made up word. We're just both people in this building. You know, so all of us, we're just these, you know, maybe we're spiritual creatures living this 3D existence, but, you know, we've been bamboozled into these made up words that they're real. And government, oh, I'm your congressman. It's like, you're just a person.
Here's my title.
Yeah, here's my, and I've got so much money in the bank. Well, just because we all collectively allow it, we collectively buy into it. You go to the bank and they give you money. Other people go to the bank and, you know, and it's really whatever social thing you want to talk about. Like, I walk into my house and people believe it's mine. I swear it gets weird we've lived there 15 years. I come in, I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm getting away with something. I'm like, I walk in and it's like, like, why do I get to own it? I'm like, I don't know. It's just something, people assume. And we live in this abstract world, and so much of it's made up. And again, it could all be fun, but we take it terribly seriously. And so, when people lose their fortunes, they think they've lost something, but you never had that fortune to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had fun with it and played with it, you wouldn't miss it because you knew it was never yours.
Fascinating and eye-opening. Just like Krishnamurti said, the word is not the thing. So language will never fully capture a reality, but we get attached to those words. And it's limiting.
Yeah. We do, don't we? Like we like, and you could see how the ego would say, I was just at the grocery store a couple days ago, and this person, she was probably 20, 30 years older than me. She couldn't reach up, and so I got something for her. And my left brain started going, "You're such a good person." I'm like, I started laughing, like, come on. All you did was get this person some bread. You're not like, you didn't solve world problems or anything. But, but we become very attached, and we're mesmerized by the storytelling of the left brain. And so it creates these, oh, you're a good person. You're intelligent. It's like, I don't make the earth spin. It's like,
these are constructs. I mean, yeah. And when it's binary, it's a problem, good, bad, or I think this is creating the divisiveness that we're struggling with. And yeah.
Whether it's racism, countries fighting with each other, it's all made up. And the reason we suffer is because we take it seriously. Like we act on these as if they're real. But, they're things that we're making up. But I'm not downsizing or saying that the suffering they cause isn't real, because it's something I point out in the new book. It's called the Thomas theorem, and it was two sociologists that came up with this, and they said, beliefs may be illusions, but if you believe in them, they are causal in their effects, and so they may not be real, but if you believe it, it's like a person having a panic attack. They are believing their thoughts, and their thoughts are making their heart beat faster. It's making them, and the more then they think, well, this must be real. And then they get caught up in a complete panic attack.
That's a very, very interesting and important point. There are people that say, oh, first comes the emotion for something that's happening outside, and then come the thoughts. But I have now come to the conclusion that fits my thinking is that, first the things come, and then we put labels on it, whatever is happening out there in the outside world, and then we compare it to what we have experienced in the past, and this is bad, or this is good, and this is wonderful, this is very serious problem. So what is it? Is it first the emotions, or first the thoughts that create the emotions? What do you think, or how would you explain it?
In my view, thoughts have hijacked our emotions to the extent that we're not even really familiar with emotions anymore. They're so determined by thinking that it's that rare moment when we turn down thought, and then emotions are experienced almost in a way that they've never been experienced before, because we're so used to the thought coming first. The thought determines the emotion. And for me, as soon as thought mechanisms started to turn down, or I guess I would say I just didn't take it very seriously any longer, all of a sudden the world was rich in emotions that I had never experienced before. And that's, these emotions were pure, and they only wanted to be experienced. See, thinking, once it puts a puzzle with emotions, let's be Freud and try to figure them out. But maybe emotions are not puzzles. Maybe emotions are just experiences. And in fact, I'm always working on, books take a long time. And so I'm already working on another book, and it's literally titled The Experiential Universe. And the whole point is that the world that we live in. It's not matter. It's not physical. And of course, consciousness is the core. But really, when you get down to it, it's an experiential world. Like our whole lives are experientially based. And thinking clouds those experiences. And thinking has become so dominant that these wonderful, I mean, you could have the sun on you and it's going to just be this amazing direct experience. You got your tea in the morning and, everything is absolutely fine. It's perfect. But the thought comes in and says, what's going to happen next week? I mean, the mind wandering stuff is remarkable. 50% of modern humans spend 50% of our waking day in an abstract world of mind wandering. And the experiential quality of mind wandering is so fuzzy and hazy compared to direct experiences. The direct experience in the morning of feeling the sun on your face is so much more powerful than the thought of what I'm going to do at work tomorrow. And you could work this all out on your own. You just go through the day and you're like, what's more real? The experiences I'm having or the thoughts I'm having about the experiences? We start going down these, puzzles fascinate the left brain. And we're trying to figure out the whole world. We're trying to figure out the meaning of existence. We're trying to figure out death. What if the whole meaning of this existence is experience? The whole meaning is just one wonderful experience after another. And you say, wow, maybe life isn't about suffering. That's something, the left brain, it's just creating this world of abstract thoughts, and that leads down this path of me worrying all the time. But if I just focus on experience, the taste of my tea there's no problem in that. And that's the meditation mileage. That's what we get from meditation. We're in the real world. We're not thinking about it any longer.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I really feel like the direct experience, the moment-to-moment awareness is really what helps us live to the fullest and even prevent premature aging. I see that people are in their heads too much. They don't look happy. They look old. They live in that echo chamber of thoughts. And I see that a lot in academia. I'm in academia too, and I completely get the reality, you talked about earlier. So I feel like, we need to bring ourselves back into the sensory experiences. And I think this is the key to letting go of all these constructs and stories and made up things and live with some sense of inner peace.
And, earlier on we were talking about resiliency, and, psychologically, that's such a mystery. The psychologists don't have that figured out because it's not in, they've come up with personality differences, but they haven't really studied the seriousness to which we take stories. There's one very, very popular idea that trauma lives in the body. Well, maybe, but trauma definitely lives in the mind. It lives as a memory, and that we rehearse all the time. And we're always trying to, how do we get out of this? How do we move on? And right in front of us is the world of experience. Right in front of us is the world of, going for a walk. And if, you can have two people who go for a walk. One is caught up in their head and they're, why me? Why did this have to happen to me? Oh, I got the raw deal on this, and and they're just, that's their walk, and there's no doubt that ages you. It ages your spirit. It ages, everything. And another person who goes for a walk, but they're just feeling what their feet feel like. They're smelling the air. They're listening to the birds. And all of a sudden, there's two different worlds that are going on there. And maybe a very basic choice, maybe the most basic choice we have. What world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in that abstract world of things that aren't even real? Most of it's trauma. I'm not downplaying it, like people haven't gone through horrible things in their lives. They have. But a lot of our modern problems are things like Chris was saying, like, oh, this person, I'm offended. This person offended me at work. And it's like, boy, that's suffering created by the mind.
Hmm.
Maybe they didn't even mean it. I mean, so much of the mind suffering is caused, like someone cut you off when you're driving, and they didn't even mean to do it. But in the
Mm,
left brain, they're like, "Oh, look at this person. They were
Yeah.
doing this, just to spite me. None of it's real. They weren't
mhm,
doing it. And the same thing with work politics. Someone gives you different hours at work, and the left brain just is like, "Oh, well, this is purposeful," and then you can't sleep because you're taking it all personally. But maybe it
mhm,
was all just a mistake, or maybe it was random, or maybe they just didn't want to do it, but they're like, "Well, I have to do this," and so much of our modern suffering is
mhm,
caught, and that's why I like to talk about the Pitahan, this uh, tribe in South America. And they may not even exist anymore. They were so small, a few hundred people, and they were such an example of right brain existence. They didn't think. They were so the way so Daniel Everett, he's a linguist, and he spent the better part of his adult life with these individuals, and he said they're never thinking about the past, they're never thinking about the future. The defining quality of this group is they live in the immediacy of experience, and in spite of
mhm,
hardships that would make most of us cry, they are the happiest people on the planet. They've got a secret. And I can't, the book I'm referring to is called Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes. And it's a great title because that's what they tell their kids. Their environment is so harsh that they tell their kids, like, don't sleep, they're snakes. So, you think, like, we tell our kids fairy tales and all this stuff, and they're like, look, this is a hard life. But they found a secret around it. They found a secret around malaria, around death, and they don't conceptualize anything. So when you talk
mhm,
about reality, they don't conceptualize reality. They're like, reality is fishing. Reality is laughing with your brother. That's reality. There's nothing behind it. They, there's no like mystery that like, oh, there's a deeper level that I could get at. They embrace the moment
mhm,
totally. And that has prevented them from suffering. And in a world that's so hard for us to imagine, they have no medical help. The life expectancy is quite short.
mhm,
Malaria, disease, snakes. I mean, all this can take their lives at any moment. But the power of the direct experience, the power of direct experience is so overwhelming. It's so joyful. It's so real that, and again, I think real and joy are both the same thing. Once we get
yeah,
past the mind, we find that the world is joyful. Like to be in reality is itself its own reward, and
mhm,
um, and they have a lot to teach us. And some people would look at them, oh, they're primitive, and Westerners have tried to help them. We're using quotes,
Hmm.
tried to bring them into the modern world, and to a large extent, they resisted it. And I love that one of their language is extremely difficult. Oh, it's simple because actually they sing their language, which is interesting because that's such a right brain thing. If you've ever noticed, like some people
same.
stutter, that's the left brain,
Mhm,
but they can sing because they're singing with the right brain. But one of
mm,
the Peter
Oh.
Han put it this way: he said, "You almost make me want this." The West was tempting them with this gadget or this gadget, and he's like, "Oh, you almost make me want it," but they know they're happy with their world, and they call
mhm,
us crooked heads. And I think that's kind of right. Our thinking literally makes our head crooked. So,
yeah, yeah.
That's very true. I'd like to turn the wheel a little towards the practical use of this knowledge and these questioning our thoughts, questioning our what the left brain tells us what's right, and the right brain, yeah, helping people um, getting the right brain strong, or the controlling momentum there. And so, yes, it is very, you mentioned anxiety attack, and well, we could put a divorce, death of a loved person or whatever crisis we can think of. And then when we're in this deep crisis just now, it may be a long way to the insight, okay, this is all made up, because in that moment it is not, because it feels very real, right? And then our left brain comes and makes it even harder uh, and even worse. But what would you give our listeners on the to their hands to actually find a better way out of any given crisis that can occur any moment?
So one very practical exercise, and I got this from lucid dreaming exercises, because people, well, how do you lucid dream? How do you wake up in a dream? It's very cool if you're a lucid dreamer. And you just like put on the back of your hands, like dreaming or reality. And you just ask yourself, like, am I dreaming or is this? And you do that all day. And it gets to be such a habit that in the dream you wake up because you say, oh, is this a dream? In the dream. And you go, oh, no, this is just a dream. And so you get the lucid dream with that. So I modified that a little bit. And again, you could just put on the back of each hand, like abstraction or just thinking, like a T for thinking or
Right.
R for reality. And as you go through your day, just continuously remind like, look down. Am I in reality? Am I dreaming? Or am I in reality or am I thinking? Which is basically a dream. In fact, when we get out of the world of thinking, we are waking up from a dream state of thinking. And practice this. Am I just? You could even put post-it notes around, like, am I in the real world or am I thinking? And the purpose of this is to just gently push one from a thought-based existence to living more in reality, because you recognize that actually we are in the real world quite often. And when you're in the real world, like you're directly experiencing, you're not thinking, and in a way you die all the time. And like your ego dies because you're so in the real world, there's no conceptual ego anymore. And so, when people worry about death, well, the death of the ego happens a lot. You change a tire and you're so into the tire, where's Chris? He's gone. There is no Chris. There's this, the immediacy of experience. And of course, Chris is a concept. So if you're not thinking about him, he's gone. And so you practice that, and you practice it. And then you notice that actually you're in reality a lot more than you think you are. But the problem is when the thinking mind comes back online, it's such a judgmental process. It goes, oh, you were just zoned out. Maybe not. Maybe you were actually in reality.
That's it. Yeah, that's so true. That is so true.
So it's a simple practice. And a couple of things you'll gain from this. One, you'll realize you're in reality more than you think you are, but you'll also feel it. So you'll feel like reality feels different than thinking, and you'll be so much peace in the real world. And there's nothing wrong. There's no problems. So it feels peaceful. And then when you start thinking again, like, oh. They probably could do physiological measures on this, because when you start thinking again, my guess is your blood pressure increases, your heart rate, all the sympathetic stuff of fight or flight probably kicks in, and you can't digest your food when you're thinking, So it's always such a more pleasant version of reality to be in it rather than thinking about it. So
Right.
The two worlds. Learn, not, don't make this effortful, play with it, make it playful. Oh, I was thinking again. Oh, that's, oh boy, there's that thought, there's the voice in the head again. Wow, and
Embrace it.
embrace it. The only way, around abstraction is through it, and you can't fight it. We've got it's built-in mechanisms. And, this is one of the hardest things with meditation, like I was talking about before. Meditation, when people ask me, like, what is meditation? What kind of meditation do you like? I'm like, there's only one meditation. That's being in the real world. Whether you're sitting with your legs, in some position, or doing Tai Chi, it's all the same. You're just in reality rather than thinking about it. And when you get that, you're like, wow, reality is, very pleasant. And so you don't work. Meditation is no longer work. It's something that you enjoy doing because reality is far more joyful than living in a world of thinking about it and trying to figure it out and trying to improve it and trying, we've been so busy trying to improve our worlds. We forgot that that's not the point. There's nothing to improve when you're just experiencing it. How can you improve on any experience? You're like, that the whole mechanism is gone. There's no reason to improve anything. It's just there. It is. And yeah, so I think that would be and the other stuff I mentioned too, the voice in the head is a tricky one because, we so often identify with it. And if you just kind of have some fun and realize, look, I have no control over that thing. And, that's a really important part of waking up to reality. So there's a couple
I like
practical.
I like the playfulness. I think this is one of my biggest takeaway messages. Really, not taking oneself too seriously, really, and being playful makes us receptive to the whole experience. Opens up something because we're not as tense. When we're playful, we're relaxed.
Yeah. And, the universe responds to that because I think it's a playful universe. What's more playful? When we play, what do we mean? It's being what you're not. If you're playing a game, you're this little piece on a board, and you're not a little piece on a board, but when you're playing the game, you are. And so sometimes people they say, well, this is dreadful. Why do we come up with egos? That sounds like I'm being punished. No, it's a game. You just haven't figured that out. And the universe is being exactly when it is, what it isn't, when it's being Chris, you know? And so that's the game of being exactly what you're not. You're not a neurotic mess, but it's pretty wild experience to think that you are.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. We are born into this world, and at that time, I guess we were pretty good at being playful until, let's say, until we were 7, 8 years old, somewhere there, and then immediately when we look at the sun for the first time, and the adults around us come and tell us what to do, what not to do, how to be successful, how to get love, how to receive attention and food and all this stuff. So we start from that very moment. We start to being something else than ourselves, whatever ourself is. And then we get to school, and we're teachers and schoolmates putting labels on us. Oh, you're never gonna make it. Oh, you're an outsider, and all this stuff. And then we come to the work life, and then oh, you can't get a raise because you're not good enough, and you can't get a promotion, and oh, your colleagues dislike you for any reason. And we are constantly not. We're constantly something else. We constantly try to fill someone else's um, um, what's the word again? Expectations. There it is. Um, and then when we're, I don't know, somewhere between 30 and 50, we suddenly come to realization, who am I anyway? Oh my God, this has gone wrong. I must have taken the wrong turn anywhere in my life, somewhere in my life. How can I get this right? And then we fall into the next one. Who am I? And then we try to be something completely different. But we're overcomplicating the whole thing all the time. When the answer is there, the I is not even real. I love that.
And like you said, your infants got to figure it out so we all had it figured out.
Right.
And then this conceptual world came upon us. And again, it is just a game, but I love playing like hide and seek with infants. I was at some place a while back, and she had maybe, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And you're just like, here I am, like I'm gone, now I'm here. And the kid just like laughs. They just think and of course that's the game we're playing. Chris is here, then Chris is gone. And then Chris is like,
Right, exactly. Wonderful.
and we're still playing the game, but here's the coolest thing, like we don't know we're playing the game. And then you start wondering, like, maybe the people who don't know they're playing the game, they're playing it at a really interesting level, maybe better than I'm playing it because I know that it's a game. Like, maybe I shouldn't even tell people this.
This is wonderful, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, shall we wrap this up and find something more or less intelligent to let our audience go? What do you think? Caroline, would you like to say something or ask something?
I just want to thank you, Chris, and thank you, Chris, for inviting Chris. And again, this is very refreshing and very grounding as well. And it will stay with me. And I'm sure many people in our audience will continue to take that in, this incredible wisdom that you shared with us, and really trying to embrace the experience. I think it's really about embracing the experience, the real, because nowadays with the abstract world that's getting even weirder and more virtual, it's kind of alarming. And we are playing literally video games and on the internet. And so I think it's expanding in another direction that's kind of alarming, and we need to bring ourselves back. So I think it's maybe the universe's way trying to tell us, hey, this has gone too far, the self or the identification with the self. So how about you try to go back in the moment? And I feel like this is more energizing to be in the moment, to have the direct experience. So I think it's a practice again, and it's not about beating ourselves up again. No, don't listen to the voice. Don't believe it. It's doing its job, but it's also an illusion. So I think you gave us wonderful reminders. You are a very, I would say, sophisticated mind and presented things so clearly, and despite limitations of language, you really were a great vehicle or channel to the wisdom you had to share with us today. So I want to thank you for that, and can't wait to read your books.
Oh, thanks. And, I just super appreciate, interacting and creating, like co-creating, the way conversation goes, and it goes in places, an hour or so ago, we had no idea where this would go. And it just went so wonderfully. And it just, it was so much fun. And I think that's a metaphor. It's what life is. It's going to take you to unexpected places, and you're there for an adventure. And it wouldn't be an adventure if you knew where it was taking you. And so, it was a fun ride, and I appreciate taking it with both of you. It was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you so much also from my side, Chris. It's been a real pleasure and honor to have you on our show, and I will definitely take this with me until death because it is something really deeply interesting for me, and then just this constant asking myself, is this true? This is what I learned from studying your book and comic books, and also I mentioned Uncle Bill before when we were not online yet. All these meetings, all these encounters of people, and being open and exploring new thoughts, new opening doors, and what's behind this door. And this is so wonderful, and it is so inspiring. And I thank you again for joining us along this way. And yes. And again, Caroline, you said it, words are just made up, and I can't really express enough what it means to me personally. So I thank you very much. And thank you to our audience that have made it all this way listening to us. And I hope you took something out of this for you. And yeah. Oh, yeah. I almost forgot. Chris, where can people find you if they would like to follow your work?
So I have a YouTube channel, and you can look it up. This Chris Niebauer is pretty easy, and I have a lot of fun with that. It gets
Oh yeah.
really weird. I mean, there's no boundaries of weirdness on that. Whatever, I don't know. Lately, I've been questioning the idea of a material world, and that's been a lot of fun. Um, and I actually have a homepage now, like just Chris Niebar PhD, and you can sign up. I finally got around to doing a newsletter kind of situation where you can put your email, and then I'll keep you up to date on things that are happening. I'm going to be teaching a class, and I literally have been saying this for a year because that's just the way I am. You know, you could ask my wife. There are projects that's like started 3 years ago and are still in progress. So I'm a little slow with the getting things done, but at
There's the
some point,
label again.
yeah, yeah. And so, you know, I've got, I really want to, it's like a, step by step thing of deconstructing thought. And so maybe 7 week class, something like that. And, each class would take thought and it would show it for the illusion that it is a little bit more deeply each week. And so that's something I've had in mind for quite a while. And yeah, so if you go and get a newsletter, you can keep up to date on that. And mostly I think on Amazon, if you're interested in the new book, The Abstract Mind, I mean, just you can pre-order it. It's out there. It's August 18th, I think, will be the date that it'll be released. So
Not much more to wait. Wonderful. So yeah, thanks a lot again. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Caroline.
oh,
Thanks to
thank you
both
for
of
you.
you.
Bye bye,
Thanks
everyone.
for joining us. Thank you.